My name is Andrew Flushy. I'm your Virginia traffic attorney, and I'm going to talk to you today briefly about your rights during a traffic stop. People are always wondering what they have to do, what they can refuse to do when the police pull them over. Basically, Virginia law requires a few things of you if an officer pulls you over. You have to provide your driver's license and registration. Those are required documents that you're supposed to provide if asked by an officer while you're operating your vehicle. So you have to do that. The other thing is, if an officer asks you or orders you out of the vehicle, you need to comply with that, because officers are allowed to order you out of the vehicle for their own safety. If you refuse a command to get out of your vehicle when the officer tells you, then you could be charged with something like obstruction of justice, and you certainly don't want to compound your problems. The final thing really that you have to do on the side of the road is that if an officer is issuing you a summons in Virginia, it's normally a little piece of paper they'll bring on a clipboard. You need to sign the summons, and all that's doing is promising to go to court. You're not admitting that you're guilty, you're not agreeing with what the officer says, you're just saying, I will come to court on the appropriate, the assigned date and time to answer for this case. If you don't sign, then the officer can arrest you, so it's usually to your advantage to just sign the summons and go about your business. Really, that's it. Those are the things that you have to do on the side of the road. Now, if you're arrested for a DUI and the officer cuffs you and says, okay, I'm going to take you to the station to do a breath test now or a blood test, are you going to submit to the test? That test you do need to do, or else you could be charged with refusal, which is a civil penalty on your first time, but it carries a forfeiture of 1 year loss of your license, which is a pretty hefty penalty. What don't you have to do on the side of the road? What can you refuse, and what, in my opinion, should you refuse? Well, really, you should keep quiet. I don't mean you should be a jerk, but if the officer's asking you questions other than license and registration, it's a good idea to simply say, I invoke my right to remain silent, and then keep your mouth shut. Invoking your right to remain silent doesn't do any good if you then talk. The other thing is, of course, searches of your vehicle or your person. If the officer asks, oh, you don't have any contraband or drugs in your vehicle, do you? You don't mind if I search, right? You do indeed have the right to say, no searches. And that might be the only thing that you say if you've invoked your right to remain silent. Then the final thing, of course, is if the officer is asking you to do roadside tests or a handheld breath test on the side of the road, you absolutely can and most likely should refuse those tests. Those tests are used to develop probable cause to arrest you for DUI. The officer routinely introduces those tests by saying, oh, I just want to have you do some tests to make sure you're okay to drive home. And some people are going to be okay and get to drive home. But a lot of people who, if you've had too much to drink, those tests are going to be used as evidence in court against you to establish that the officer had a good reason to arrest you for DUI. If you refuse those tests, or you simply just don't even answer, if you've already revoked your right to remain silent and the officer starts having you do a test, if you just stand there, don't do it, or maybe sit down on the curb and just silently refuse, then those tests can't be used against you because you didn't do them. Your refusal can be used as knowledge that you may have drank too much, but that one little factor alone might not be enough to establish a reason to arrest you. So in sum, you need to produce your license and registration, you need to exit the vehicle if you're ordered to by law enforcement, and you need to sign a summons if you're given one. But you don't have to allow any searches, you don't have to talk to the police, and you don't have to do any roadside tests in Virginia. So be sure you know your rights whenever you're driving in Virginia. If you get into a bind, definitely contact me so we can discuss how to help.